losing just one leg in beating Joe Cullen 3-0 in their second round encounter. Both men.
So these guys are like Willie O'Connor. He's not a pro, is he?
No, he's mixing the darts with being a carpenter
that's
as well.
amazing.
Now Dolan's a bit kind of more experienced in terms of the darts. He's a 12th year
play at the Grand Prix in City West a couple of times.
Yeah, and Darrell Gurney went through already, and Steve Lennon from Carlow plays tomorrow for a place in the last 32 as well.
Excellent.
So that's it. They're looking at a decent place, yeah.
Okay, brilliant stuff, Will. Thanks a million. Time for the football show.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Boyle Sports. Now with same-day withdrawals to your Visa debit card.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern-day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Okay, so it is the Wednesday night football show, and I'm delighted to say that the best Premier League commentator on Off the Ball has joined us in the studio. Sounded a bit like Kevin Kilbane there, didn't I? How are you?
Similar patronising tone.
Yeah. How are we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
What a week.
Bloody hell.
What a couple of days.
Bloody hell.
It's the first time you and I have had a chance to discuss it.
Yeah.
Were you caught by surprise?
No, not at all.
Not by the actual eventuality itself, but just by the fact that it's happened so quickly after the Liverpool game, which you were obviously at.
No, I felt leaving Anfield on Sunday evening that they were either going to sack him this week or they would keep him till the end of the season, because it couldn't get any worse than what we saw at Anfield on Sunday. Beaten 3-1, could have been 5-1. Exact same against Manchester City earlier in the season. So they've been outclassed, completely outclassed by those above them. But also you look at the first halves recently against Southampton, against Newcastle,
Crystal Palace, Valencia.
These games where they got through by passion and a little bit of character and a little bit of excitement and energy in the second half. But actually on game plan in the first 45 minutes, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. And 19 points behind Liverpool, a million miles off the top four, and all the nonsense around the club, it felt as though it had to end. And there was no great energy to Mourinho over the last few months. It had got boring. I was one of those people, you're probably quite similar, people who are in the game love Mourinho because he's very good for the media and he's very good to the media. He will always talk to you, no matter how bad the result is. He will come out, he will face the media. He's a brilliant communicator. He will come out and he will make his point again and again and again, whatever it is, controversial or not controversial. But even that was gone this season.
He'd stopped doing that.
He'd go to Old Trafford and there was nothing. He just didn't seem to have the desire, whether he looked around that group and felt that rightly that he couldn't turn it round, mostly I would say of his own doing. But it just felt it has lost all its energy. And I said to you earlier that watching United on Sunday, they were a small team, a small club. This was Fulham or Burnley going to Anfield. This wasn't Manchester United giving up possession like that and hoping against hope that somehow they got lucky.
Which they did for 45 minutes.
Which they did, absolutely.
Go in at the break at 1-1. And I was thinking to myself, do you know, they
Mourinho
could
masterclass.
They could leave here with a 1-1 draw and Mourinho would put that down as a positive point, albeit that still would have left them, 10 points off the top four.
I thought it was appropriate in a way that the two goals were deflections, because it was always going to be that way for Liverpool. I was asking Kevin during the commentary, like, should Liverpool have a bit more about them here? They're up against a team who have no ambition. If you're true, proper title contenders, should you not have a little bit of nous that you can pick them apart? And you're kind of going, well, actually, it's very hard. Yeah. It's extremely difficult. They're doing everything right. There's just no space. They're taking pot shot after pot shot, which United are happy to let them do. But the massive risk is that one deflection, it all goes horribly wrong. And that's exactly what happened. They got rightly punished for that. So I did think, leaving Anfield, that can't get any worse. Very much like Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane and that last week with the FAI, and a lot of the conversation was about money and can they afford to sack him. I felt the same thing. They couldn't afford not to sack him. If it was £15 million, which was what they're saying in the end, it's nothing to Manchester United. Nothing.
Yeah, especially if, and this is a huge if, very unlikely scenario, that they somehow claw that 11-point deficit back. Well, you're in the black then when it comes to the amount of money you've had to shell out compensation-wise in comparison to what you're going to generate via your participation in the Champions League next season. There was a couple of things that you mentioned there, and I'll bring them up. One was the players and how you've said in a couple of the games where, particularly in the first half, where they started really badly, they did drag themselves through those games. Like, they did beat Newcastle. They somehow managed to win in Turin against a Juventus team that many seem to be in the top 2 or 3 contenders to lift the Champions League. And in a week where a lot of people are obviously blaming Mourinho for the United's woes, but they're also pointing the finger at the players, saying there's stuff going off the field that shouldn't be. It's a fractured dressing room. There's guys who don't really care enough to play for Manchester United. Sometimes I looked at them and thought they're actually digging results out in spite of the lack of a game plan, in spite of being hung out to dry by their manager on a regular basis. Like, it took a serious amount of character to come back and beat Newcastle in the last 20 minutes, beat them 3-2 with the amount of pressure that was on them in that week, to hang in there against Juventus, to dig in at Anfield in the first 45 minutes in the face of a barrage of energy and pace and power and explosiveness that they simply weren't not equipped to deal with. And I'm not...
You've been brainwashed by Mourinho, who has played down the ability of these players consistently. That's why it was difficult for Liverpool. These aren't chumps. These are all internationals. These are
I'm not playing down the ability of these players.
But
I think the new manager coming in now looks at a squad that is brimming with unfulfilled potential.
Exactly. But the unfulfilled potential this season in this team, but players who have shown throughout their career that they do deserve, the vast majority of them, to be putting on a Manchester United jersey. Maybe not being starters every week, but being good enough to be in and around a Manchester United squad. There will have to be changes. There's no question about that. Juventus was a game they could have lost 3 or 4-0 in that first half. But you're talking about Newcastle. You could talk about Palace, Southampton. These are the worst teams in the Premier League. So players of that ability are always going to get a chance. Newcastle had no confidence. Southampton had no confidence. Crystal Palace had no confidence. Second, you get a bit of momentum, they falter. They fall apart. They suddenly get frightened that they're up against Manchester United and they're up against Lukaku, Rashford and Martial. That's all that happened there.
Of course, with the Southampton and Palace games, that it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
They didn't win those games.
But even still, there was a comeback within those games, and there was a bit of fight about them. But I think it was more to do with the opposition, and I think they are good enough, even against Liverpool the last day. The back three were good enough to hold their shape when they were pushed back, which meant that Andy Robertson and Klein, when they bombed forward again and again, didn't get that ball inside the 6-yard box where it got past the first man. That never happened. But what will be interesting, I think, and one of the jobs you'd imagine for Solskjaer over the next 6 months, is that when he leaves the job, that he's handing over a group that he understands, that he can go to Pochettino or whoever it is and have a full debrief over a few days and say, I've looked at these players on the training ground. This guy is good enough for Manchester United. This guy isn't. Actually, do you know what? Mourinho was right about Martial. His head is gone. He hates Manchester. He's not a good trainer.
Regardless of what Solskjaer, if he puts together a document, for example, and hands it over with lovely illustrations in it and PowerPoint presentation, and make sure he brings it to the right ring binder that puts a little bit of laminate on and everything, that's going straight into the bin. No matter who. Well, because if it's a Pochettino or a Zidane or a Simeone, an Allegri, whoever it might be that is the next permanently appointed Manchester United manager, are they going to put any stock in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's opinion of these players? They'll want to see them on June 25th, whenever pre-season starts, themselves, and they'll only form their opinion on what the future of these players at Manchester United are by what they see with their own eyes in pre-season. Surely Pochettino is not going to take anything from whatever someone like Solskjaer might say.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. I think suddenly now you have a second opinion, you have a second set of eyes on these players. I'm not saying he has to take his opinion on every single player, but whereas at the moment we're sort of looking at them through Mourinho's eyes, and you're very confused about where Lukaku is and where Pogba is and where countless of these players are. If another manager, like if Martial doesn't work under Solskjaer and he hasn't worked under Mourinho, is he going to work under Pochettino? Or is there now actually somebody who can give you an honest opinion, who isn't going in with vindictive eyes like Mourinho seems to have been? Maybe it's not Pochettino he's having the conversation with. Maybe it is a director of football that he's having this conversation with, and it's taken out of Pochettino's hands, which I guess is another part of this debate as to, do Manchester United restructure the entire footballing side of the club, which is probably something they need to do. But I do think there is an opportunity over the next 6 months to actually see what these players are about and get rid of the excuses for the players, because I'm surprised there wasn't stories in today's papers of the United players out partying last night when the news came through. I'm really interested to see what happens with United over the next couple of years. Somebody like Martial, you just From Euro 2016 on, it just hasn't happened. It felt like it was set up for him to go to Euro 2016 and become Kylian Mbappe, to be that world superstar. Even Marcus Rashford, who I know is hugely rated, and you often hear him, he's a new Michael Owen. He's of that level. He hasn't been able to get in the Manchester United team. He hasn't
but
been
when you
able to
see
put
what he
himself
does
as-
for England, the way that he played in Seville when England beat Spain in that thrilling Nations League game, the range of his passing that night and his ability to finish, which is not something we've seen very often when he's wearing a Manchester United shirt over the last 12 to 18 months. I'm with you on that. What
But do you not
fascinates
think-
me most is now that the pressure is off, now that they're not going to be hounded in the press by their own manager, now that maybe someone's going to be in charge, whether it's Solskjaer or whoever comes after him, that is going to take the handbrake off and not focus on the negative ways of playing football, that the players are going to maybe, possibly, be allowed to play to their own strengths. Like any manager in the Premier League would be, outside of maybe Klopp and Guardiola, would be only too pleased to have the 6 or 7 guys that play with the ball at that club. I'm talking Pogba, Mata, Martial, Rashford, Lingard, Romelu Lukaku, Alexis Sanchez, Fred, who we've seen absolutely nothing of either defensively or offensively over the last couple of weeks, can't even get into the matchday squad, that we will see this potential being unlocked. Now, they may not be good enough to finish 4th, but they might win a few games. They might win a few games, say 4-3 or...
But that's where I
4-2.
think the opportunity is when I'm talking about finding out more about these players. That if the potential is unlocked in Marcus Rashford and he ends the season brilliantly, and Martial does, but Lukaku doesn't, and Lukaku still looks out of his depth a little bit against the better teams, well then again, from whoever the next manager's point of view, you can look back in that 6 months and say, and when you're having your conversations, we need a new striker. Lukaku, it's not going to happen. Let's get rid of him. Rather than somebody going in after a season of Mourinho where you're probably going in and Ed Woodward saying, well, listen, give these guys a chance, give these guys a chance. He can now say, well, they've had 2 chances and they haven't made it. And maybe you're properly coming in next summer with an entirely fresh mindset. But I did feel yesterday when this initially happened and the hours afterwards where it wasn't quite clear who was going to be the caretaker manager and what the potential lining up Pochettino for the summers. 7 or 8 months in football is an absolute lifetime. You can plan for Pochettino. They're not going to be allowed, it's impossible to see them being allowed approach Pochettino between now and the end of the season officially, whereby there will be a handing over
But you
process.
know there will be back channel
understandably,
discussions.
there will be.
Like
But what
Daniel
if
Levy
Chelsea
and Ed
win-
Woodward will be
what if
speaking in
Spurs
the
win
next
the
month, I
Champions
would
League?
think.
What if Spurs win the Champions League?
Really don't think that's something they're going to have to worry about.
You just don't know, though.
You don't know. Look, Leicester won the Premier League title.
But this is what I mean.
Accept
That
point.
all these different things.
Well, then it's the perfect
change.
time to leave White Hart Lane, isn't it?
If it is Pochettino, and so 2016 he signs his new contract at Spurs and he gets his title changed from head coach to manager, and the feeling that he wanted to take more responsibility for transfers. And if they're looking at the club, the Glazers and Ed Woodward thinking we do need a director of football, we do need a stronger footballing voice, and then actually 4 months later you're going to Pochettino and he's like, well, I'm not working with that person. Like, all these things need to somehow be figured out over the next
It's
few
not a
months.
done deal.
No, I do think it is remarkable, and I wonder what your thoughts on this, that it seems bizarre to me for a club and a company of Manchester United's stature, the biggest in the world, the lack of footballing intelligence around that club. So they have Bobby Charlton and they have Alex Ferguson, who, from what we can tell, are very much hands-off. I'm sure there's polite conversations ongoing, but Ferguson doesn't have his hand in football anymore. He's not travelling around Europe looking at what is the latest technologies, who are the latest names, what are the things we can learn. He's not like that. That when Jose Mourinho gets fired, so when he has that meeting with Ed Woodward, who does Ed Woodward turn to say, what next? What is best practice for us as a football club? Like, Michael Carrick, it seems, was the strongest footballing voice left in the club, that they didn't have a director of football or somebody with the clout who had worked around Europe that is looking at Borussia Dortmund or looking at Bayern Munich or looking at the Spanish teams, looking at up-and-coming coaches, thinking, as Arsenal did last year, and didn't just bring in one director of football, they brought in 3 or 4 strong voices to, whether to unsettle Arsene Wenger or to plan this new structure for the club. I just think it's quite remarkable for a billion-dollar business to be left with Michael Carrick.
Well, you see, they have the equivalent of a director of football driving that billion-dollar business. And that is the way Manchester United are being run at the moment. They have Ed Woodward and now his colleague who still runs the office in London, guys who are able to maximise the earning potential of this club. They are in a position that Arsenal were in before they made the appointments that you've just referenced now, albeit several years too late. But when between 1986 and 2018, every single season you have had this unbelievably big personality in charge, a dictatorial type personality, bar 6 months when David Moyes was in charge. Every other day they've spent either under Alex Ferguson, Louis van Gaal or Jose Mourinho. None of them would ever countenance the appointment of a technical director or a director of football. So you could argue they have never actually been in this, they've never had the freedom or the wriggle room to actually go and make an appointment such as this, because the guys they wanted in charge at that given moment in time would never countenance such a development. So, I mean, that's one reason why it hasn't happened. But you're right, that fact that when they do turn around and go, right, what do we do now? There is literally nobody that Ed Woodward can turn to. And that is what they now have to change. And the guy who's going to be trying to pull the strings over the next 4 or 5 months, as we found out today in an official capacity, a lot of talk about it yesterday, is United legend Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. This is him taking charge of a training session with his current club and his still future club once he goes back to Norway, Molde.
Any chance anyone want to shoot? Come on, huh? You're 18 yards away from goal and you keep passing it. Shoot! You won't ever score a goal if you don't shoot. Finish! Tima, you're here. He's coming towards you. Take it, look, go, shoot! You're one-on-one with the keeper there, you play with the wall. Shoot! Mattia, you dribble 2 or 3, you're here, shoot!
I think he's given them a licence to go for goal.
This is one of those videos that in 6 months we'll decide whether this was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, positive Manchester United mould attacking philosophy, or somebody with no tactical insight at all, and his only game plan was shoot.
Well, it's hard to use his Cardiff experience as a rod to beat him with, because when he arrived they were a mess. They were a bit of a basket case as a club. They've only come back up into the top flight in the last 6 months or so. So it wasn't just Ole Gunnar Solskjaer that was unable to stop the rot. And look, the owner there, what can you say about the ownership structure that was in place when he arrived at the club? So I'm certainly not going to take Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as being the manager that spent those short few months at Cardiff. But one of United's biggest problems is that they can't defend. And they've already conceded one more goal in this season's Premier League than they did in the whole of last season. What can Ole Gunnar Solskjaer do to try and improve them defensively? What's his nous in that department? Is that where Mike Phelan comes in? Is that where Carrick comes in? Both of them are obviously maybe a bit more defensively minded than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is or ever was.
Quite possibly. Again, I don't think they're all terrible defenders, but some of the statistics that have been thrown out. So the only team that they've outrun this season in a match were Fulham. If the players simply aren't trying because they hated the manager, if you get 10% more out of every single player, energy-wise, maybe suddenly
it makes it harder for your opponents to score.
Exactly.
And they will get fewer shooting opportunities. The opportunities that they do get, there'll be a bit more pressure on them while taking them. That's definitely one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that your confidence is at an all-time low. Eric Bailly is not the player, I think, overall that we are currently seeing. I think there's so much more in him. For me, he has everything that you need, bar a manager that's willing to back him. I'm not quite sure if you can throw Victor Lindelof into that same category, but I don't think we've seen enough to make a really well-rounded opinion on whether or not he has what it takes to be a top-class defender. We'll see that over the next year and a half if they're kept at the club. A manager that knows what he's doing, that knows how to put a defensive game plan in place when you lose the ball, and is willing to put the right guys in and around him. You've already got a brilliant goalkeeper in behind them. 12 months' time we'll know whether Lindelof or Bailly can cut it. I remember when Vidic and Ever arrived at the club. Now, both players have been at Manchester United longer than they were when they were being written off, which was only a few months into it. They both arrived in January. Everyone was writing them off straight away. Turned out to be two of the greatest defenders the club ever had. Yeah. Because you had a manager that knew how to get the best out of players.
There's no doubt that Solskjaer has a really tough task because of the time he's coming in at the season. So they have very winnable fixtures between now and when they go to Wembley to take on Spurs in the middle of next month. But he's no time on the training ground. So all you can do is the basics, which I imagine is where Mike Phelan comes in, and they decide straight away, we're playing 3 at the back, we're playing 4 at the back. You stick with that. I'd imagine they'll keep it as simple as possible. And then you try and use your motivational powers, that there is 20, 40% more to come for all these players, and that's what turns it around. And maybe the shoot we're hearing there is part of what the message will be from above. These Manchester United supporters want to be entertained. That's one of the major problems that happened under Mourinho, that it coincided with Guardiola and Klopp, both of whom get their clubs emotionally, but also play brilliant football. It's exciting. Liverpool may not win the league this season, but they're going to bloody enjoy the ride because...
Get their players emotionally as well.
Exactly.
They are so in tune with what their players want and feel and need. And that brings us to my last question for you before we say goodnight to you. Gary Breen was on the football show last night, and he said that he doesn't believe that Jose Mourinho is a dinosaur in managerial terms, and that he still believes him to be an elite level manager, and that he still has the capacity to go to a really top club and win another Champions League. Now, Gary Breen knows an awful lot more about this game than I do, but I couldn't disagree more.
Why?
I think that Jose Mourinho's teams are set up in the exact same ways they were when he arrived at Chelsea, with some pace out wide, big man up front, and physical power elsewhere in the team. And that just doesn't cut it anymore. And that's the sort of thing he tried to put in place with United, with the likes of Lukaku and Fellaini and Nemanja Matic. And, well, the players he's using there that I've just named maybe weren't of the calibre of a Duff and a Robin, and then the more physical guys like a Drogba and a John Terry, for example, and a Ricardo Carvalho. He still sees the game, in my mind, the way he did 10, 12 years ago. And the game's passed him by. So unless he hits the reset button and undergoes a huge rethink on his footballing philosophies, he won't ever be successful again.
I don't think I would quite go that far. He's still only 55. He won a title, 5 years ago in England?
Yes, 5 years ago.
So 5 years ago.
For a start, 5 years is 5 years.
He most certainly was the wrong person at the wrong time for Manchester United.
But do you think that he sees himself at fault in any way for what's gone on over the last year?
Maybe not right now, but I would imagine when he sits down over the coming months, he will look at himself in the mirror. We're talking about an incredibly smart man who has come from being Bobby Robson's translator to being the most dominant coach, or one of the two most dominant coaches in football.
But an incredibly stubborn man as well.
True, but he has another, 10 years probably in management. I don't doubt for a second that he will get many more big jobs. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up back in the Premier League in the next 4 or 5 years, in any way, at one of the top 5 or 6 that are there right now. But I do think he has it in him to reinvent himself or to slightly alter himself. I don't know if we'll ever...
That's really my point.
I don't know if we'll ever see Mourinho playing a Guardiola or Klopp style of football.
But there is a reinvention required.
It doesn't mean that you can't win Mourinho's way. But to win his way, you need the right group, and he needs to be able...
Like the group he had at Inter.
Exactly.
So if he was to arrive at a club maybe like an Inter, for example, a club with a storied history, but at the time they aren't necessarily where they want to be or where they feel they should be, and that they will do, and the players will do whatever he says, they will all buy into it. Clearly that was a big issue at Old Trafford because they simply didn't buy into what he wanted to do.
You do look through that United squad now, no matter who comes in, and who are the characters? Who is the leader of that Manchester United team? Whereas you look at Chelsea, it was a perfect time with Terry, with Lampard, with Drogba, these hugely ambitious players who became his boys, became his players. Likewise at Inter, Madrid obviously was a bit of a basket case as well. But there's nobody you'd look at United. So Paris Saint-Germain is the place straight away. He's been like you would look at that and think, again...
You're just digging the same hole for yourself.
Exactly. You can't come out 5 games in and say, well, Neymar does this, that and the other.
Yeah.
You have to play him every week, and somehow you need to get the very best out of him. But this is clearly the lowest point of Mourinho's managerial career. But I most certainly wouldn't bet against him bouncing back.
Okay. You've left all options open for yourself there to look like...
I think I sat in the fence, did I?
In 3 or 4
years.
Whereas
you've written them off completely.
I'm going to write them off.
And you're on the presumption that no one will remember.
Exactly. You can back him to bounce back in the years to come. Nathan, thanks a million. We're going to do some more on the Mourinho story, but from a slightly different angle after the break, because we're going to talk to Matt Hughes of the Times in London, who's written a very interesting piece today on Mauricio Pochettino. He believes this is a job that he covets and may well end up in the months to come. We'll talk to you in a moment.
Football on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Boyle Sports. Now with same-day withdrawals to your Visa debit card.
Bobby's Late Breakfast.
This Sunday, we'll be spreading Christmas cheer as we come to you live from the Romeo and Juliet balcony of the iconic Bewley's Cafe on Grafton Street. Revel with us in the Christmas spirit as we celebrate with live music, a children's choir, and a host of Christmassy celebrity surprises. Plus, the man himself, Santa, he's also going to be joining us. Join us for an extra festive Bobby's Late Breakfast live from Bewley's Cafe on Grafton Street this Sunday from 9
on News Talk.
See you there.
Make the festive season epic. This Christmas, only Air Prepay gives you great 4G smartphones from just $59.99 with unlimited access to YouTube and social networks like Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp, an extra 20 gigs of data, plus unlimited calls to any network for just a €20 top-up. To enjoy more epic connections, go in store or visit air.ie. Air. Let's make possible. Available on Air Simplicity. For full terms, details and fair usage, see air.ie.
Football Index is reinventing football betting. You can buy and sell the world's top players. Their value may go up and down, but it's not over with the final whistle like a regular bet. Football Index, reinventing football betting.
Start building your portfolio today at footballindex.co.uk or download the app now. New customers only, minimum deposit and conditions apply. Gamble responsibly.
At Expert Electrical, we now offer a same-day nationwide click and collect service to our customers. Simply log on to expert.ie, choose and pay for your product, and then select the Expert store you'd like to collect your order from. And with 67 stores nationwide, there's a local expert near you. Find yours at expert.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
This is Jamie Heaslip for Goal. Christmas is all about family, something I understand even more since I became a dad for the first time this year. And when I look at my daughter, I feel so fortunate and joyful. But for thousands of families in crisis around the world, Christmas isn't a time of joy. It's a time of hunger, danger and fear. That's why I'm asking you to make a donation to Go, who are helping families in places like South Sudan, Ethiopia and Syria. This year, the need is more urgent than ever, so please give as generously as you can by visiting go.ie or calling 1850 832 100 now. That's 1850 832 100. Thank you.
Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Well, it's been a pretty entertaining and interesting evening for Dele Alli. He's got a brilliant goal for Tottenham. He's been cracked in the back of the head by a water bottle thrown by an Arsenal supporter, and he's got himself a yellow card for playing on after the whistle had gone. But his goal was Tottenham's second. They do lead 2-0, and they've played just shy of the 90-minute mark at the Emirates Stadium. Arsenal have had plenty of chances. They've actually played quite well, but they've been undone by two long balls from the Tottenham goalkeeper, Gazzaniga, one which was converted by Heung-min Son, the other by Dele Alli after a brilliant through ball to him from Harry Kane. So Tottenham are going to be going through to the League Cup semi-finals. It looks like Chelsea will be joining them there as well, because Eden Hazard has finally broken the resistance put up by Bournemouth at Stamford Bridge this evening. 6 minutes before the end of the game, Eden Hazard gave Chelsea the lead, and they are in injury time at Stamford Bridge. Over in Germany, Bayern Munich have beaten Leipzig, a late goal, 7 minutes from time from Frank Ribery. And in the Scottish Premiership, Celtic are going top as things stand. They lead Motherwell 3-0. Hibs and Rangers are still scoreless. So unless Rangers get a late winner, it will be Celtic going on top of the Scottish Premiership. I think that's the third different leader of that division in the last week or so. So that's all the things happening in terms of the live sport. We're going to continue to look at the Jose Mourinho story. We'll give you a different angle on it. The view from London and Mauricio Pochettino, because he is obviously being touted as the bookies' favourite for the permanent position of Manchester United manager. We will hear from Matt Hughes of the Times in London. We're going to chat to him in a moment about Pochettino's links to that, John. But first, let's hear what the man himself had to say when asked about it in his pre-match press conference yesterday.
No, first of all, I want to send my best wishes to him, and I feel so sorry because you know very well I have a very good relationship with him. He's a very good friend, and always it's sad news what happened today. And then to follow your question, it's not my business what happened in another club. Only I want to send my best wishes to Jose. But I think after nearly 5 years, it's a lot of rumor that happened in my position here, like a manager in Tottenham, and I cannot answer this type of question, because this type of rumor happen in that business, in football. And of course, always I am so, I respect a lot the opinion of everyone. When the people praise me, when the people is not agree with me, when the people say different things or something that business we know very well, that the rumor, a lot of rumor happen, but it's not my business what happened in another club now. I am so focused in trying to deliver my best and our best job in this football club, and now we have ahead a very busy fixture. Tomorrow we play another derby, so important derby for us. It's quarter-final of the cup, and I think you and all the people understand that I am focused, and we are focused in try to tomorrow to deliver our best job.
Yeah, Mauricio Pochettino speaking yesterday ahead of the Carabao Cup quarter-final. Matt Hughes, the Times deputy football correspondent, is on the line. Matt, you've been writing today about what you believe to be Pochettino's desire for the Manchester United job, that if we get to a situation whereby Old Trafford and the Chiefs at White Hart Lane or Tottenham are able to come to an agreement, that Pochettino actually is willing to leave. What is your understanding of that? What is your source in terms of why you believe that to be the case?
Well, my understanding is that he would be interested in leaving Tottenham for United under the right circumstances. And I was actually quite surprised to hear that yesterday afternoon. Obviously, Pochettino's done a great job at Tottenham in the 5 years he's been at the club. They're clearly progressing every season in the Champions League regularly. He's got a good relationship with the chairman, Daniel Levy. They work closely together. And obviously going to United would be a leap into the unknown. However, having made some phone calls yesterday to people who have spoken to Pochettino about this, generally, not yesterday I must say, but generally their sense is that he would view this as a too good an opportunity to turn down. And while there are problems at United, clearly he would feel that he could quite quickly get a massive improvement out of that squad, and would also relish the chance to have access to greater transfer funds than would be afforded him at Tottenham, given their ongoing need to pay for the new stadium.
He essentially sees himself, Matt, and you can understand why, as a Champions League winning manager and potentially one of the best and most successful managers in European football. Does he believe at his core that simply is not something that he will be able to fulfil as the manager of Tottenham Hotspur?
Well, I doubt he would admit that, but I think privately there's probably a realisation that it's going to be very, very hard for him to win the Champions League and the Premier League at Tottenham in the next 5 years, given the strength of the competition in England and Europe, and given the financial restraints of building their new ground, which they're hoping to move into in the next couple of months. He talked about that yesterday. He made the point that Tottenham have unique, well, along with Arsenal, they've built huge new stadiums, basically using their own money, which no other club has done, and it is a remarkable achievement, but it does impinge on their ability to compete on the pitch. And I think Pochettino has done an incredible job in keeping Tottenham competitive and at the top of the table. And there probably is a feeling that he probably can do no more there, given the current climate.
When he signed the new 5-year contract in May of this year, Matt, that was just weeks before the summer transfer window opened. Did Mauricio Pochettino sign that contract on the understanding that there would be no players coming into Tottenham over the course of the summer, with the shadow of the stadium looming large, both literally and metaphorically? Or was that something that was sort of becoming clear to him as the weeks and months went by, and that he wasn't overly pleased with?
I don't think it was that clear cut. I think Tottenham, they were active in the market last year, but didn't close any deals. I think part of the reason for that was their inability to offload players. We saw with the sort of Pochettino's irritation at being unable to play fourth in the Champions League tie against Inter last month. Tottenham's squad is full. There's players that aren't getting in the 25 because they have bodies, but they haven't got the right bodies. And I think while Pochettino would have been happily offloaded players such as Dembele, Danny Rose, maybe even Alderweireld for the right price, that didn't happen. And as a result, the club's hands are tied on incomings.
He was very obvious in describing the situation financially at the club over the last 48 hours, literally reaching inside his tracksuit trouser pocket and turning it inside out and showing that it was empty when he was asked if there was any money to spend on incoming players in the upcoming January transfer window. He says, I don't have any money, so I won't be bringing any players in. I guess it's something you have to ask, how long will he tolerate that situation? He's obviously a pragmatist. He knows that this is going to be one of the best facilities and one of the best stadia in European club football, but it means that his hands are tied financially. How long will he put up with that?
Well, that's the point, isn't it? That's the question that is making people very nervous at Tottenham at the moment, and particularly if a club of Man United's stature come in for him, which I think they will. It's easy for Tottenham fans to sort of, pour scorn on Man United and say, they're a mid-table club, they're a shambles, they're not going to get in the Champions League next year. But the bottom line is they have a global appeal, and as a result, financial resources that Tottenham will probably never have, as well as, a very long and distinguished history. So if they present Pochettino with a long-term project, give him a transfer budget, give him power over signings, I think he'll find it very tempting and maybe too tempting to turn down.
Will they, do you think, given that they now are looking to appoint a technical director or a director of football at Old Trafford, which is obviously a departure from their entire history, will they give him the control that he probably enjoys at Tottenham, or how much control does he have at Tottenham at the moment? Because I know Daniel Levy and one of your colleagues in London, Matt Law, on the Telegraph, was writing this week about Daniel Levy. That's one of the points he would be putting to Pochettino, that if you go anywhere else, you will not have the same control over incomings and outgoings and of the finances when it comes to playing personnel at Manchester United or Real Madrid as you would do at Tottenham. How much control does he actually have? And is there a worry from Pochettino's point of view that he would lose much of that if he went to Old Trafford?
Well, I don't think these are binary situations. He obviously does have a degree of a great deal of control, but if you have no pounds to spend, it doesn't matter if you have a choice of how to spend it, which has been the situation for 12 months at Tottenham. And I kind of think that the director of football thing is a slight red herring in this. The most important appointment for Manchester United is the manager. They have to get that right, and in getting that right, they will compromise on the director of football, and they will not appoint a man over the manager's head that he's not happy to work with. Pochettino's worked with directors of football before. He worked with Paul Mitchell at Southampton and also at Tottenham. He wasn't replaced, but Tottenham and United are very different clubs. Daniel Levy is de facto technical director, really. He runs that club. Ed Woodward is kind of tacitly acknowledged that he does not have those skills and feels they need more help in the transfer market. I don't think that would be a stumbling block to recruiting Pochettino, providing they could agree on the right candidate.
You also wrote today...
He may even be asked to bring someone with him.
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask that question. You also wrote today that, as you understand it, United are actually preparing an offer not just for Pochettino but for his entire coaching staff, Jesus Perez, Tony Jimenez and Miguel D'Agostino as well. So I guess they have to reach an agreement with Tottenham first. But so as you understand it, the bookies are right in having Pochettino leading the betting at the moment, that he is the primary target for Manchester United, and any other manager after that would be second choice.
I mean, these situations are fluid, but that's my understanding at the moment, and people around United certainly were not attempting to play that down yesterday, which is unusual in itself. It will cost them, money. He's got 4.5 years left on his contract, so it's going to be, pushing 40 million, I suppose, put in all his coaching staff as well. But given what they've spent on, average players, given they continue to give out big contracts for players that are injured often and aren't contributing, I don't think that will be be a problem. Ultimately, it will come down to the relationship between Pochettino and Levy and whether he's prepared to ask to leave.
Yeah, we've seen players sign new long-term contracts almost as a sign of loyalty to the club, in that I know I'm going to be leaving. Luis Suarez did it at Liverpool, as did Philippe Coutinho, for example, that you are just putting your club in a position where they will get a huge transfer fee as opposed to having to sell you at a cut price maybe because there's only 6, 12, 18 months left in your contract. Basically the opposite of what every Arsenal player has done at the Emirates over the last 10 years. Was that contract signed in May, that 5-year contract, do you think that was part of what was going on there, that Pochettino wasn't necessarily guaranteeing that he was going to be hanging around White Hart Lane for 5 years, but he was maybe doing Daniel Levy a favour in that the compensation would be absolutely extortionate if or when he's poached by a bigger club?
Well, it suited both parties at the time, didn't it? Obviously Tottenham don't want to lose him, but if they're going to lose him, they're going to make sure they're paid for it. Manager got a big pay rise, and he will have calculated that if a big enough club want him, they will be prepared to pay the fee. And from Tottenham, there are only a handful of clubs you could join. I mean, he's not going to go to Arsenal. He wouldn't go to Barcelona, given his history at Espanyol, unlike no knowledge of the German market. So you're talking United or Real Madrid, possibly Chelsea at a pinch, but that would also be difficult. So all those clubs have the resources to pay what it takes, and I actually don't think it is extortionate. If you think that Fred costs £52 million, the manager is the most important person at any football club, which is why Mourinho has lost his job. So I actually think that the £40 million would be money well spent.
Is he the kind of guy that would have reservations about going into what appears to be a broken dressing room at the moment, full of egos, that he doesn't necessarily have to deal with at Tottenham because he just seemed to have them all pulling in the same direction? Or is it something that he would relish, that he would see so much potential that's largely untapped or certainly being underutilised in this Manchester United dressing room, that when he looks at them as a group of players, he thinks of the huge possibilities?
I think it's fair to say he's been more comfortable working with young players throughout his career and has clearly developed them very well. But, let's not forget that is part of the tradition of Manchester United, which Mourinho never really tapped into. So that should be seen as a strength. In terms of working with big characters, he's got half the England team there. He's got France's World Cup winning goalkeeper. So, he's not an academy coach, and I think he's sufficiently strong-minded and, frankly, a sufficiently impressive individual to be able to take on that dressing room. And the other thing about Pochettino is he doesn't stand for any nonsense. You fall out of him, you're gone. Kyle Walker made it clear he wanted to leave, barely played for Spurs again. Alderweireld barely played last year till he came back into the fold. So he's not a manager to mess with, and I think he could really stamp his authority on that dressing room.
If it becomes apparent, Matt, in the weeks and months ahead that Pochettino is open to a move, that will surely alert other clubs around Europe, including Real Madrid, maybe one or two other big clubs that might struggle to win the silverware that's expected of them in the next couple of months, like a Bayern Munich, for example, maybe even a Paris Saint-Germain. Who knows what options might be available to Pochettino if it does leak out that he's actually willing to make a move, and that Manchester United might actually have some very stiff competition to deal with.
Possibly, but I think if this is going to happen, it's going to happen privately and fairly straightforward. I don't think it will, become apparent. As you say, I think these deals are done privately. The Guardiola City deal was done way in advance of the announcement. There's no way that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's move to United was done yesterday, and that was kept quiet until it was, basically all but signed. So it is possible to keep these things quiet. Pochettino has a very, very small inner circle. He doesn't have an agent, just deals directly with clubs himself, gets a lawyer in to do the contract. So I think if both parties want this to happen and Tottenham give their blessing, I think it will do.
This is really a conversation for Ed Woodward and Daniel Levy to have, isn't it?
Yeah, quite. And they obviously see each other. It's going to be very interesting the next Premier League meeting next month. They both attend that. I'd be very keen to be a fly on that particular ball. I'm sure there'll be lots of photographers waiting outside whichever Mayfair hotel they're meeting in.
And it's clearly something Daniel Levy's going to be anticipating. This will not hit a man of his experience out of the blue, that he will be steeled, he'll be ready. We've heard in the past how difficult a negotiator he is. Anybody who has spent time across that negotiating table with him is generally left with their wallet empty and their pride battered and bruised.
Yeah, and I think he'll make sure he gets a good deal for Tottenham. But that being said, United have just paid off a year of Mourinho's contract that he only signed in January, so that they're not averse to throwing money around if they deem it to be necessary.
Last couple of questions on Tottenham themselves, Matt. Where are we with this stadium? When they take on Borussia Dortmund in February, will that be at White Hart Lane or will that be at Wembley? We're even hearing talks now of leaks in the roof, issues with the pitch, further delays possibly in the pipeline. Are they going to play any football this season at the new White Hart Lane?
I mean, on this story, you'd be daft to put any money on a particular date, but I think they will get in there this season. They have made good progress. They obviously had 6,000 fans in last week to look around, and they're kind of aiming February or March at the moment. So the Dortmund game is very much sort of touch and go. That's on the cusp of when it could possibly be ready. They would obviously love that to be one of their first games, such a exciting fixture, and they've done very, very well to get through the stage given the group they were in. But they cannot guarantee that now, so I certainly can't.
Finally, Matt, you've been very good with your time. Is there anything in your mind that Daniel Levy can do between now and May to keep his manager?
Well, he could try and loosen the purse strings in January, I suppose, and make firm pledges about money going forward. But the problem they have, it's not just transfers; it's the wage bill. They managed to get Harry Kane to sign new contracts, but they've got a whole host of others that need renegotiating as well, and they still have a fairly tight pay structure. So I think ultimately it's about the best card he can play is the strength of their relationship and the esteem which Pochettino is held in by the Tottenham fans. Because when it comes to resources and ambition, they just cannot compete with Manchester United.
Matt, thanks a million.
No problem. Cheers.
That's Matt Hughes, the Times deputy football correspondent, just giving us the Pochettino and the Tottenham and the London-based side of this Jose Mourinho / Manchester United story. This will run and the rumours will continue to run until we get some sort of an announcement on who the next permanent Manchester United manager is going to be. OK, 53106 for 30 cent is our text number. You can still tweet us on @OffTheBall. We'll get to some of your tweets and texts next.
Off the Ball on News Talk.
It's not you, it's me. Actually, it is you. When we first met, you were all I wanted, but now you're just too limiting. I want to express myself, do things I've never done, be creative. I just need more from a phone.
Looking for the new love of your life? The Samsung Note 9 comes with the new Bluetooth-enabled S Pen, allowing you to scribble notes and take pictures remotely. And until December 24th, we're offering up to €165 cashback on a range of Samsung tech, including tablets, phones and wearables. Available from select retailers. Terms and conditions apply.
'Twas the night before Christmas and all through the house, new appliances had been installed with a click of a mouse. A fridge freezer, a dishwasher, new oven and hob, a 50-inch TV and speakers, just the job. You see, at Appliances Delivered, we always endeavour to make each festive season the best one ever.